Welcome to this short video on anonymous threatening letters. Interesting, this morning or last night, one of our analysts, Paul Chamberlain, had posted an interesting anonymous threatening letter at a private room for analysts to discuss, and I thought it would be interesting as an object lesson to touch upon it here with some of the basic elements of attempting to discern the threat level analysis, discern if it is genuine, to understand a little bit about the author himself. In anonymous letters, there are also the segment of whistleblowers that have to be anonymous. And they're actually pretty easy to discern because the motive will come very clear. The motive is generally some type of danger, some type of warning that the public must hear of. That is the priority. It's the motive for doing it, and it comes out in the priority. Whereas with lesser threats, the priority for carrying through a threat may be very much weakened or come at the end. But it is not the priority to bring harm to someone. And then we look upon even the fake hate ones, and there's always something behind those as well. Now, in terms of identifying an anonymous author, it is not an exact science. It is very difficult work, complex work, and this won't be terribly complex, but we come across cases that require a great deal of study and collaboration with others. Most of the authors are male. We do get some females, but most of them are male. And what we look at is a major contextual point is that if we determine that this is not a genuine threat, or it's a very weak threat, for example, that means it must be in a specific context. It is only, that analysis is only applicable for the time of the writing. That this person at the time of the writing did not pose a threat, for example, or the person is thoroughly committed to making this threat. The reason why we have to limit that as such is because, very simply, if someone goes through with the mechanics of actually writing, mailing, posting on a door, that sort of thing, if they go through with that, and let's say it's very mild and they're looking more to taunt than anything else, what we can't predict is what may happen to that semi-unstable person, for example, between the time they sent that or posted it or placed it and current. So let's say if someone sent a school, I'm going to shoot up a school type of letter, and they're pretty common now in terms of our culture. And we determine that this is not a threat that is likely to be carried out at the time of this writing. What happens if later on that writer, who is unstable, experiences some form of humiliation and rage and anger, and that can change? And so it is really a snapshot, and we must be very cautious about that. It is a snapshot of the time of the writing, or this, speaking. Some even will do it by video with a face shielded or something. There's generally some motive behind all these things, and that can reveal itself in the letter itself. So I have one for you that I think you'll appreciate. Let me show the screen up on this one. This person, I don't know who she is. She wrote, "I recently moved to Melbourne for work and live in a unit in the northern suburbs. I woke up this morning to this letter pinned on my front door. So much for having pleasant neighbors." And what's really interesting about, even before we get to the actual note itself, but some of the things that she wrote on this. So she wants to know that she's a recent relocation to Melbourne. That's a priority right up front. And that she works, she wants to know the reason, people to know the reason why she moved. It's for work. And she wants to give a general location in the northern suburbs, which that allows people to look at and say, hey, what's it like there? Are there any Muslim-owned businesses? Are there many Muslims there? And, we have a reasonable area to look at. Then she wants us to know that she woke up. And you can't wake up unless you're sleeping. So this is something very important to the author. The author is telling us, it can't be me because I was sleeping. I couldn't have put it there. So right away, it gets our attention. I woke up this morning to this letter pinned on my front door. Interesting, the use of the word pin there. I believe that she's connecting herself to the action. So much for having pleasant neighbors. So I think someone has a little bit of issue getting along with others, but that's for a different study. But when you receive a threat, we shouldn't think to see it introduced by the word pleasant. So there's a wake up right there. Pleasant. So that should let us know, hey, she considers this sarcastically pleasant. I'm not going to argue with her. I'm going to let it be. And let's take a look at what was written. So it starts off with a Star of David, and it is, I'm not a handwriting expert. I leave that to Steve Johnson and others, but I do note that this is retraced very heavily. And the Star of David is causing our author to be stressed. We don't see it in the rest of the handwriting, but this recopy is necessary. So let's see about the threat against this Muslim, the recipient, well, we would call the intended, unintended recipient, but the recipient's obviously for publication. So the Star of David indicates in thinking about Jews, this person is stressed. And so if it's stressed because she thinks Jews are going to harm her, then it's understandable. And I expect to see a lot of retracing and a lot of anger and agitation in the rest of the handwriting. I don't see it, but yeah, none. So that's the first signal that we would take a look at. And then someone like Steve can go through the handwriting in terms of some of the characteristics and fascinating information. So someone wrote, it looks like a woman's handwriting to me. And if you could just type in why you think that. It's always good as we make assertions that we talk about why we're doing those things, and then I'll let you know whether I agree with that or not. Not that I'm an expert, but I do have an opinion as well. Hey Muslim, exclamation point. Hey Muslim. So hey is a form of hi or get your attention. We can say with this type of opening, our author needs attention. Our author needs attention. And I'm glad that someone screenshotted it because it probably will end up being deleted anyway. But our author is someone that looks for attention. I want the focus upon me. I want to be heard also. And so we'll look at someone that is maybe experiencing some loneliness. I recently moved, and this is where I live. So maybe there's some loneliness there, but clearly the author wants to be heard, and we have to find out why. Why and what's causing that? Hey Muslim, exclamation point. This author really needs to be heard. It's an acute need. It's an acute need for attention. So let's see if there's a threat. So some of you probably from other videos and really from your own understanding, you'll see it says, we, a lot, families, we, getting them all? That's a lot of use of the pronoun we, and what the author is indicating, and I hope the screen is large enough, it's as big as I could get it. What the author is indicating is that she, and I'm giving that away, but I would say in terms of the percentages, he is alone. Alone and in need of being heard. Then the author writes, besides the we, so we, and think of the ransom note for John Benet Ramsey, with the emphasis upon we, and many others that I've done. It's masking. It's the pronouns are actually helping us. I'm trying to convince you that I'm not alone, which if I'm trying to convince you I'm not alone, I'm probably alone. Noticed. You've moved in, and I'm pretty much willing to believe that she feels unnoticed. To notice something, it means to be looking for something in an open statement. As a response to something else, it's different, but notice we've been looking, that sort of thing. We've noticed you moved in. So this is where the threat, excuse me, this is where we expect to hear a threat coming in. It's, and I see Lou's here with us, Lou writing that it's unnecessary. Lou's an excellent analyst. And it's unnecessary, therefore it's very important. Excuse me. We've noticed you moved in. Our author needs to be noticed. This is more affirmation of such a thing. We are a lot of Jewish families. So you have another we, a lot, and families, which is not spelled correctly. We are looking at an overemphasis upon plurality, confirming that this author is alone. Live around here is location, which is really interesting to me about location, since she gave it up here. Melbourne, in a unit, northern suburbs. Of course, I was sleeping, but we are a lot of Jewish families live around here. We don't want you here, but we can't stop you. If you make trouble for us, we will make your life hell. And so this is really interesting material here. We call this a conditional threat. A conditional threat. Remember about being pleasant? In other words, I am going to the person I'm threatening, I'm giving them an out. Just don't make trouble. And you'll be fine. I'm a little bit concerned about your well-being. That is a positive linguistic disposition towards the Muslim. The author likes herself. The threat isn't real. It allows for, and here's another problem with that threat. Trouble, make trouble. What does that mean? It's vague. It's vague. The vagueness of the threat belies the idea of hate. Okay? Hate is a very powerful emotion. It's usually accompanied with words that will indicate that power, if it's genuine, of course, and that someone will then show their hand as hating Muslims. And the hatred, generally speaking, in a genuine threat, will come right up front, right up front. So this, we call the Star of David, not only did it cause her stress, but this is a dog whistle. This is a call to Muslims. The Muslims are the unintended recipients, meaning that allegedly she herself is the recipient, the intended recipient, but the unintended is more important. And the dog whistle means, that's just an expression, I'm not sure if it's universally used, but calling out to certain people, like a dog whistle, a dog hears the sound, but other people may not hear the sound. That's the expression of dog whistle. She has her audience with this to get their attention. And so if you hate Jews, you'll get the notice there with the Star of David. So there's not a real genuine threat here. There is just a vague conditional threat. So keep the condition and you'll be fine. What's the condition? Don't make trouble. What trouble? She can't even define that. And so my conclusion for this, with the different points there, is the author is female. So someone had written about the handwriting being female. The author is female. The author is Muslim. The author's in need of attention. There's some psychological problems there. And the author is willing to stir trouble in society in order to gain attention. And that's what I think is most concerning. The author is willing to stir up trouble in a neighborhood at a very precarious time to fulfill the need to be noticed and be heard. Now, we sometimes get something like this from someone that's going to be running for office. Politicians do this. They continue, at least in our time, dividing people into whatever. And then the whole purpose of dividing people is to pit one against another. And that's why all the different identities and that go into the politics and which groups and one against the other. And eventually it all comes to the surface. People get angry of being falsely accused. So I think that the author has some real psychological issues. I think that she probably needs some kind of help, unless, of course, she's running for an office coming up or something like that. I would be concerned about why she looks for notoriety. For some, it is to gain admission into schools, into jobs, into giving a special status. Again, our culture, we've elevated the status of victim to something that people ascribe to, and they want to be. They don't want to be a victimizer. They want to be a victim. And someone that is stirring hatred or attempting to stir hatred, but there's no threat to her, the recipient who was sleeping. Keep that one back in the back of your mind. So couldn't possibly have done it. Another one, Lou, let me get that. There's currency and be able to present oneself as victim. There is traction for careers. There is attention seeking. There is trouble to be stirred, and the focus can come upon that person. Let me see if I have any other questions or comments. Do you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make? Please do that for a few minutes, and we'll conclude that. So it's not a difficult to discern, and there's much more in it. And people like Paul and others will go into this in a great deal of depth and have many more details than we can cover here. Things that I will miss that I would like to hear from others, things that others will miss that I'd like to hear from me. And that's how we work as a team. Yep. That's a good comment here. Let me put that one up. Hey, Muslim is quite convivial. It's like I might say, hey, Mom. I suspect their view of Muslims is quite positive. Very good. So that's, and we're saying that later on in the same note. That is what we call the linguistic disposition, how someone perceives or looks at. And this person likes Muslims. This is not a Muslim hating Jew. this is someone who has a very favorable attitude towards Muslims, and she's revealing that in the letter. How many of you think it is the handwriting of a female? I'm curious just to see that. And I apologize for missing the comment that may have followed up on that later on, but how many of you think it's a female handwriting, and why? Good. Some people noticing the capitalization. Hatred caused people to do things emotionally that can not only impact the handwriting, but the language, of course, being the most important, the language that is chosen. And that hatred to go through with such a thing can be vented. So I think police need to focus on the woman who said that she received this pinned to her door. The sarcasm has female energy. Interesting. Yeah, I believe that a female Muslim, very likely the person that claimed it was pinned on her door, is the author. I also believe that's a female handwriting. Females write better than males. Generally, especially the motor skills. I learned that when I was a young boy, where our school teacher had told us, probably when I was 9 or 10 years old, that the smaller hands of the female had better dexterity for writing, and boys, you really need to work on your handwriting. And we had to put extra work in back then to have better handwriting than we did. But it was something that was always more flowing and even sometimes even poetical looking with the females, just superior handwriting. Yeah, and I recognize that some people that hold on to high emotions in a letter like this, they're going to have opinions that analysis is not going to change. I seek to always go into everything with an open mind, always concerned about this. But basically, the person reveals a need to be heard, and the person does not hold hatred of Muslims in that. It's fake. It is not a real threat. Passive aggressive, instant comment. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with her that she would need such attention, but she does. Yeah. With the hatred, we expect to see anger and commitment, linguistic commitment in the letter. Now, anger is an emotion, and so emotions generally will produce more wording. I think sometimes when you see, and I've had a few of these, genuine threats that were very short, it's actually more chilling because the person is not trying to blow off the emotion. They are committed to bringing this type of harm, for example. But generally, we look for hatred to build, and there is sometimes a letting off of steam in the threatening letters. And when there's not, you stand up and take notice, because if there's a linguistic commitment and not emotion, the person's well made up their mind. They don't want to be talked out of it. Question is, where is the threat? The threat is, we will make your life hell, which is also vague, not pointed or directed. What does that mean? No, there is a threat. That's right there. We will make your life hell is a threat. Yeah, the lack of spelling with families, I noted that too. That's a good point. The exclamation after, let me put that up, looks good. The exclamation After "Hey Muslim" is adding to the positive emphasis. Women use exclamation points to often add emphasis on positive points. Very good observation. No capitalization of the word hell. Also, the threat here comes at the very end. The threat comes at the very end. I'll just, don't mean to focus on one person's questions, but because these are made as assertions, not questions, and they've been incorrect the whole time here, but just point this one out. We does not refer to anyone, which begs the question of, we are a lot of Jewish families. That's who we is. So. I think this looks like a call out to Muslims to gain the attention in order to get support. Agree. That would be what we call the unintended recipient, which is very much on the surface. And that is, what I refer to here in the United States. I don't know if it's dating me or if it's something that others have, but that's what we call dog whistling. No profanity. Many men use the demeaning words towards women as if it was from a man. Very good. That's an excellent comment. Profanity is on the rise with women, but in this context, I think this comment is right on. Is right on. I think there would have been difficulty concealing that emotion, a true misogyny in that sense, and it's missing. So very good. I'm glad you put down some of your reasoning that you had earlier on touched upon. That's good. Thank you for adding that. What we do is we throw questions at a statement rather than being overly committed to our own ideas and our opinions. And it just helps us sort things through, especially if you have other people with you, including a live audience, where people are asking questions and maybe having answers. It's very helpful. Why use capital letters at the beginning, then get smaller? Again, that would be for Steve or others, but good question. I think as commitment goes down. Yep, there is Lou's pointing out the lack of conviction by the author. You notice that as an analyst, and she does excellent work, she lists that as a question for discussion, a question, so she doesn't lock into a position and say, no, this is why. But yes, I'm going to kill you as a direct threat. If you don't stop doing this, I'm going to kill you. Now I'm giving you an opportunity to stop doing whatever you're doing. The author won't even identify what they're doing that is wrong and what the consequences will be. So it's very much a reduced threat, just to bring hell. So great point, Lou. And I apologize that I'm missing so many of your questions or comments here. It goes by pretty quickly on me. I know you're typing quickly. Up to the thread, it actually feels like a friendly message might be coming up. Exactly. Very good. Very good. Hey. It's childish nonsense. The problem with that is that, for the person doing that, it really is quite childish. But what if it has an impact? What if it stirs hatred in a neighborhood or an area? Or as she posted for public consumption in a wider stage. So what may seem juvenile-ish and foolish and attention-seeking could bring a lot of trouble if someone thinks it's real. I can't move past the addition of the symbol at the top. That's where I see the author went too far and it seems deceptive. Good point. I agree. someone asked about handwriting analysis. So I was never a big fan of it. I used to look at it and a little bit of study, and what I found was mostly it was political. The person would always give themselves away. And then I started working with a few others, including Steve. And we even did some cases together. And there was one particular one that absolutely blew me away. Steve did a psychological profile of a female who was making an accusation of a sexual assault against someone. I did a psychological profile based upon the language, the psycholinguistic. We submitted those to the detective, who had a copy of her psych eval done by a psychologist, and all three matched, and she was telling the truth. She was being assaulted by an uncle. And so after that, Steve had my attention pretty well. So I try to stay open with all things as I can. And let's just put this comment up. Even if the author didn't intend to cause violence, just this is go back to what someone had written about Childish. It's like childish foolishness that could inadvertently bring discord, and discord always allows for the possibility of violence. So good comment. I appreciate that. And then a follow-up comment, which I think is interesting. I can't see an adult with an ounce of common sense taking this seriously. I really can't, Peter. Welcome to our culture. People do. Some of you may remember from a few years back, I did one where another one posted on someone's door that started off with "Dear African American Family." And the media picked up, and the media immediately goes to the KKK. It's like, how many KKK killers who hate Black people are going to start off with "Dear"? And it was fake. So it is difficult to imagine, but also here's another element for Jeanette, is what if a politician sees it and doesn't care that it's fake, but just wants to seize upon it, like a false narrative used for political gain? We have that quite a bit. So interesting comment. To the point of the author wanting to be noticed, then victim was quick to share to social media. Very good. Just a contextual observation. Very good. Are rounded letters more of a female tendency in handwriting? I got a punt on that one for someone that knows, like Steve, and there's a few others that have training like that. This may be an unintended consequence. I don't know. Don't know the answer, but it certainly is interesting. I know there's been a graph produced on where these violent protests, and when I mean violent can be against people and property, have taken place on college campuses. And it's really interesting. The most expensive colleges in the United States are where the concentrated, actually moving in with tents has taken place. But the affordable ones, very, very few. Very few. Interesting cultural observation. Agree. That person doesn't like the symbol. I think that's where the stress comes from. I think this is genuine here. So I believe, again, subjective and not always accurate, but I believe this is real hatred, real stress, real emotion, negative emotion towards Jews, and positive emotions going out, including care. Hey, in other words, Muslims, take care that you don't cause trouble so no hell comes upon you. It's looking out for the best interest sort of thing. So I don't know how long this will be up on X, formerly known as Twitter, but it was there this morning, and I appreciate Paul sharing that. Any other last questions? Why is it folded? I don't know, but good question. Good question. I like inquisitive thinking because I have more times where I say I don't know an answer, but I love to dig at it later on. How many of you think it has a need to persuade factor? And she wants to persuade us that the author wants to persuade us that she hates Muslims, doesn't do a very good job. She doesn't. I think it's good for social media clout and views. I did look at some of the comments. Get that? Strong need to persuade Lou, thanks. Broken Goth Doll, I agree. When I was looking at the comments under the post, there were many in support. And so you can see there's like a rallying of the troops, which I think is a real shame. Yep, meant to be publicized, I agree. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll sign off for now. Thank you for joining. Let me see this. I just don't want to miss anything that someone puts effort into. Very good psychological view there. We don't want you here, but we can't stop you. This may be, and I'm using it, as a possibility. They may feel very impotent, very weak within themselves, an inability to do something, and probably very much alone. That's why the location starts off with the moving location. Those are all elements that say this comment may be correct. Very good. Thank you all for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again on another video. Thank you.